Have you ever wondered what dark secrets lie beneath the floors of an old, quiet house? Imagine living right above death itself, breathing every night, every day, unaware that beneath your feet, buried deep under freshly poured concrete, lies your entire family, silenced forever. A family home that slowly transformed into a crypt of horror. Welcome, seekers of the macabre, to another twisted crime tale. I'm your guide into the shadows, where the scariest stories aren't made up, they're real. Tonight, I bring you a story that crawls under your skin, a tale of secrets, betrayal and terror that was buried deep within the walls of a house once known as a home. This is the story of the House of Terror, where a 19-year-old young man became the center of a nightmare so twisted it still sends shivers down the spine of everyone who hears it. Bruno Marabel stands accused of murdering an entire family, his own wife, her parents and her two little kids, and burying them inside their house. It's a puzzle wrapped in blood and lies, and we're about to piece it together. Grab a blanket, lock your doors, and let's step into the darkness. In the heart of Paraguay, in a city called Fernando de la Mora, lived a family that once enjoyed a life of comfort and promise. Dalma Rojas Rodas was born in 1992, the only daughter of Elba Graciela Rodas and Julio Rojas. In the early days, the family had it all: a successful car wash business, a good home, and dreams that soared as high as the skies. But life, as it so often does, took a dark turn. Julio, Dalma's father, became addicted to gambling. With every bet, hope slipped away, and soon the family lost everything. Their car wash, their properties, even the small touches that made their house a home, all vanished into debts and despair. As the family struggled to survive, a change began to brew. Desperation led Julio and his wife to step into a dangerous world. They started committing small crimes, and soon their actions grew bolder. Using forged documents and fake signatures, they tricked people out of their trucks, even seizing lands that did not belong to them. They were building a life on lies, and in that shadow, Dalma was caught in a web she did not choose. Even as a young girl, Dalma was used as bait, an innocent face meant to lure unsuspecting victims into schemes that grew darker by the day. Yet as she grew older, Dalma began to see the horror of her parents' actions. In search of her own escape, she turned to a life under the bright lights of the stage. First as an erotic dancer, and later in music videos where she dazzled on screen. Her beauty and strength soon caught the eye of Eva Barrios, a singer and producer. For a time it seemed that love might guide her away from the darkness. But fate has a cruel way of pulling you back into the abyss. When Dalma became pregnant with Eva's child, the couple fled to Brazil, seeking a fresh start. Yet the past never truly leaves you. Dalma's parents, unwilling to let go of their life of crime, reported them to the authorities. Eva was locked away for 9 long months, while Dalma narrowly escaped jail thanks to her pregnancy. Even after Eva's release, the ties that bound Dalma to her family's sinister world remained. Back in Paraguay, life forced Dalma to return. Settling in the bustling capital of Asunción, she found herself in a rented old mansion, a place that would soon be known as the Casona del Terror. It was in this somber dwelling that Dalma discovered a new passion: martial arts. She trained hard in kickboxing and boxing, and soon her reputation grew. People said she was strong, agile and full of fire. It was during this time, in the sweat and echoes of the boxing gym, that Dalma met Bruno Marabel, a young man of 18 whose eyes held secrets of their own. Their connection was immediate and intense. Though young, Bruno was drawn to Dalma's strength, and soon they embarked on a relationship that many believed could be the beginning of a bright future. But every love story has a shadow. In January 2018, in a small town called Aita, Bruno and Dalma were married. To the outside world, they appeared like any other couple, in love, hopeful, and even a little ordinary. They had a pit bull dog, and life on the surface seemed to promise a way out of the haunted past. Dalma, it was said, had left behind the scams of her parents and was working to build a life of her own. But as the saying goes, you can't outrun your shadow. The dark history of her family continued to lurk in every corner, waiting to emerge. On the fateful night of October 8th, 2018, the peace of the old mansion was shattered. Neighbours began to notice a stench so foul that it made their skin crawl. A smell of decay mixed with an eerie silence that spoke of secrets too heavy to bear. Along with the odour, swarms of flies gathered at the front door, a sign that something was terribly wrong. The police, called by terrified locals, arrived and tried to enter the house. At first there was silence, but soon desperate efforts forced the door open. What they found inside was a scene from a nightmare. The house was a mess, with overturned furniture, mysterious bloodstains on the walls, and an overpowering stench that seemed to seep from every crevice. The officer's attention was drawn to a strange patch of freshly laid cement near the door, a piece that looked out of place amidst the decay. With trembling hands, they chipped away at the cement. There, hidden beneath, lay a corpse. An old man, between 50 and 60 years old, his body already rotting, but that was just the beginning. The search continued deeper into the house until the detectives reached an unused bathroom at the back. There, under another patch of new cement, they uncovered 4 more bodies, 2 women and 2 young children. These victims had been covered with a layer of lime, a substance that sped up the decay, turning the scene into a macabre display of death. Soon, the identities were made clear. The dead were none other than Dalma Rojas Rodas, aged 26, her mother Elba Graciela Rodas, aged 51, her father Julio Rojas del Valle, aged 52, and her 2 small children, Christian Santino, just 6 years old, and Saulo Pio, only 4. The only person missing from the grim tableau was Bruno Marabel, the young man who was seen as both Dalma's love and her guardian. Where was he? And what had he done? With the discovery of the bodies, the investigation took a chilling turn. The police focused their attention on Bruno Marabel. At just 19 years old, he was the only one unaccounted for. As the authorities scoured the area, Bruno was finally tracked down in a dramatic police chase. In a taxi speeding through the streets, he tried to escape, but the officers were relentless. Shots were fired at the taxi until it finally came to a stop, and Bruno, along with the taxi driver, was taken into custody. Not long after, others linked to Bruno were arrested. Alba Rosalia Almoa Núñez, an 18-year-old who had been involved with him, and the siblings Araceli Sosa, 22, and Marcelo Sosa, 23, who worked with him at a fast food restaurant, were also detained. The investigation revealed that these young accomplices had been close to Bruno, but many details about their role remain murky. In early police interviews, a strange picture began to form. Bruno's statements were riddled with contradictions. In one moment, he admitted to having a deep conflict with Dalma's family, claiming they had threatened him and his loved ones. At other times, he denied any wrongdoing, insisting that he had not seen Dalma for weeks before the tragedy. Yet evidence such as photos from a boxing competition and geolocation data from his phone contradicted his words. Witnesses recalled seeing him at the gym with Dalma on September 28th, the day the family was last seen alive. Bruno's attempts to build a defense grew more desperate. He claimed that the police had tortured him into confessing and that he was innocent of the horrible crimes. But as more clues piled up, the strange gifts he had given away that belonged to Dalma's family, the timeline of his movements. One detail that raised many eyebrows was a note discovered at the scene. Written on a simple serviette in shaky handwriting, the note read, "Help children," followed by the initials D and B. Many in the investigation believed this was a cry for help. A final, desperate message from someone who couldn't bear the pain of what was happening. It hinted at a hidden layer of the tragedy, a secret that might explain why Dalma, a young woman who had fought to leave her family's criminal past, was caught in the spiral of violence. Let's pause and consider the eerie details of this case. What drove Bruno Marabel to commit such a monstrous act? Was it passion, greed, or something even darker. Some believe that jealousy over Dalma's supposed infidelities fanned the flames of his rage. Others think the motive was far simpler, a hunger for power, money and control over a life that had once promised so much. Deep within the walls of that cursed mansion, the evidence whispered secrets of a crime that was not born of robbery or random violence, but of a personal vendetta. Forensics later revealed that Elba, Dalma's mother, had been smashed with a hammer to death, a tool that left a mark of raw, unbridled violence. Julio, her father, was found to have been stabbed with a 7-inch knife. The wounds on Dalma and her children told a story of multiple stabbings and signs of asphyxiation, a brutal death. This wasn't a quick robbery gone wrong. This was personal, vicious and hateful. As police dug deeper, another shocking fact emerged. Bruno had arranged a gathering, a so-called conviviality at the mansion on October 6th. He invited his friends, including the very people later detained with him, to celebrate as if nothing had happened. In a bizarre twist, he even roped in his girlfriend Alba for this event. The idea of a party in a house that reeked of decay and death is almost too grim to imagine. Many believe that Bruno staged the event as a cover-up, a way to create an alibi while he finished the grisly work of burying the bodies. Even more disturbing were the claims made by Bruno in his interviews. At one point he said that Dalma had asked him to marry her so that the family's children could not be taken away from her. Then he shifted his story to claim that he had been forced into marriage by threats from her family. These contradictions only deepened the mystery, leaving everyone to wonder what truly drove him to kill those he once loved. Now, imagine the tension rising on that fateful night. The family had spent the day as if it were any other. Children going to school, Dalma and Bruno practicing boxing together, the mundane hum of daily life echoing through the halls of the old mansion. But as dusk turned to night, the calm was shattered. In the early hours of September 29th, while the world outside slept, Bruno returned to the house. Some say he carried with him a cold determination, as if the very air around him had turned ice. Inside, in the silence broken only by the distant hum of machinery, a terrible act was set in motion. First, Dalma was attacked. Witnesses believed that a heated argument or a sudden burst of rage led him to violently subdue her, a struggle that ended with her lifeless body, marked by signs of asphyxiation and sharp wounds. Not long after, the chaos escalated. Bruno, driven by motives that still baffle investigators, whether passion, money or fear, turned his anger toward Dalma's family. One by one, he murdered them in a series of grisly acts. Elba was struck down with a heavy hammer, leaving a shock of brutal force behind. Julio was stabbed, his life cut short in a moment of desperate confrontation. The two small children, helpless and full of life just moments before, suffered wounds that no child should ever endure. After the horror unfolded, Bruno did something even more chilling. He gathered the bodies and, using a wheelbarrow and a shovel, he began to bury them within the very house they once called home. With construction materials bought the next day, he covered the remains with cement and lime, sealing the fate of the family within the cold walls of the mansion. It was as if he wanted to erase them from the world, a final act of cruelty that ensured the house would forever carry the stench of death. The discovery of the bodies shocked everyone, and the investigation focused on the only suspect living at the scene, Bruno Marabel. The courtroom soon became the stage for another kind of drama, a trial that would capture the attention of the entire nation. In September 2020, as the evidence piled up and witnesses told their harrowing accounts, the trial of Bruno Marabel began. In the trial, every piece of evidence was laid bare. The wheelbarrow, the shovel, the freshly poured cement, and even the chilling audio recordings from phone messages all pointed to a single terrifying truth. Bruno, the young man who had once been seen as a boxer and a lover, was now the prime suspect in a case of multiple murders. His words, full of contradictions, did little to hide the overwhelming evidence of his guilt. Despite his claims of innocence and allegations that he was tortured into confessing, the truth became undeniable. The court found him guilty of a quintuple murder, 5 lives lost in a single night of horror. For the murders, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. As a security measure, an extra 10 years were added, sealing his fate for a total of 40 long years behind bars. Even as the sentence was passed, a strange phenomenon persisted. Bruno's case became a macabre legend. On social media, a strange cult of personality grew around him. Some believed he was innocent, others admired the cold, unrepentant way he had spoken during his trial. Fans, mostly young women, began to form clubs and even planned visits to see him in prison. It was a bizarre twist, a criminal who, despite the horror of his actions, had managed to capture a dark fascination among the public. But for many, the sentence was a small price to pay for the unspeakable acts committed that night. The memories of Dalma, her parents, and her innocent children lingered like a curse over the town, a stark reminder of how quickly life can be consumed by darkness. Even after the trial ended and justice seemed to have been served, the mystery of that dreadful night continued to haunt everyone. How could a 19-year-old with so little strength compared to the adults he claimed to confront have carried out such brutality? Was it really only about money and jealousy? Or was there something even more sinister lurking in his soul, a darkness that no one could explain? Some believe that Bruno was pushed into a corner, forced by circumstances that twisted his mind beyond repair. Others whisper that the family itself, with its long history of crime and deception, had bred a curse that could not be broken. The truth, as it often is in cases like these, remains hidden beneath layers of lies and misdirection. A small, torn note, scrawled with the words, "Help Children," and the initials D and B, still puzzles investigators. Was it a desperate plea from a dying victim, or a cryptic message meant to taint the name of someone else? The note adds another layer to the mystery, a final echo of a voice silenced too soon. And what of the day when neighbours reported the dreadful smell and the horde of flies? Could it be that the house itself, with its dark history and tragic secrets, was alive with the echoes of past sins? Many say that on quiet nights, if you stand near the old mansion, you can almost hear faint whispers, as if the walls remember the cries for help and the sound of a hammer striking flesh. The case of La Casona del Terror reminds us that sometimes evil is not a force from beyond, but a very human act. A moment when anger, betrayal and desperation combine to create a horror that defies understanding. In the end, Bruno Maribel was condemned, but the questions remain: what drove him to such madness? And will the ghosts of that night ever truly be laid to rest? As we draw this tale to a close, take a moment to let the silence sink in. The story we've shared tonight is more than just a series of events. It is a mirror reflecting the darkest corners of the human soul. In a world where family bonds are meant to be a source of strength, La Casona del Terror shows how betrayal and twisted ambition can turn love into a weapon of destruction. Remember, dear viewers, that behind every dark story lies a lesson. Sometimes the monsters we fear are not creatures from a nightmare, but ordinary people driven by extraordinary pain. And sometimes the truth is hidden under layers of deception, waiting for someone brave enough to dig deep and bring it to light. What do you think drove Bruno Maribel to commit such a terrible act? Was it jealousy, greed, or perhaps a deeper darkness within? I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about the hidden corners of this story and what it might mean for our understanding of evil. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to Twisted Crime Tales and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next journey into the heart of darkness. We have many more tales of mystery, suspense and horror waiting for you, each one a key to unlocking the secrets that lurk in the shadows of our world. Thank you for joining me tonight. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and always remember that sometimes the truth is more twisted than fiction. Good night, and beware the shadows.